Getting started.
All right, so 7 o'clock, so we'll call to order the Visual Resources Review Board meeting for the town of Farragut, February edition. The first item on our agenda is the minutes from the January meeting. You guys have had a chance to look at the minutes, or is there any discussion on those minutes? Any questions or comments?
I have a question.
Okay.
If someone chooses to say no on a vote, do you have to say why?
No, not that I'm aware of. I think.
Okay.
All right, if there's no further discussion on the minutes, do we have a motion?
Motion to approve.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? All right, so moving down the line to the ground-mounted sign applications. The first one is for, looks like Rick Terry Jewelry Design and West Knox Chiropractic, changing the sign out here just nearby on Kingston Pike.
Okay. This is a request to basically replace the existing sign. They're going to, totally remodel it. They're going to paint the base of it black. They're going to change out the faces. They're going to remove the old digital clock or whatever it was that was on it. And they're also adding numbers, an address number to the top of it. We've reviewed it. It meets the minimum size. It's approximately 39 square feet. Everything exists in terms of the location. That's not being changed. The lighting's not being changed. They took out a little landscaping in there to get in and begin working on it. Staff can recommend approval of it, subject to them. I'm putting some of the landscaping back, and we think it would better sort of screen the base of that sign. Mm-hmm. It's definitely an improvement over what's there. The existing sign's quite faded, and I think you're all familiar with it. But apart from adding back some landscaping at the base there, it's compliant or pre-existing.
Do you know what they're planning on adding back to it?
Don't right now. I mean, they have quite a bit of landscaping, as you can see from the
Yes.
from the picture there, or, in place. It's just that we think that right now it's there's quite a bit of black there, and maybe a little bit of
Color.
of shrubs in front of the black base, and it is an elevated sign because of the topographic difference between the height of the road and the sign. So it is, it's an elevated sign in that manner.
All right, well, it looks like it's legible. So it looks like they're going to trade out each side of it with who's on top, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, there's no problem with them doing that. It was something at first we thought maybe it was an error on the drawing, but that is what they proposed to have it.
That's good though.
Yeah.
Because it's just the two.
Equitable that
Yeah.
way. Mm-hmm. All right, is there any further?
Is the lighting staying the same?
Yes, it is.
Are there any other discussion on this sign? All right, do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to accept it as it is. It meets all the requirements.
Landscaping.
You're going to have the subject to for the landscaping.
Subject to landscaping, okay.
All right, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I second.
All right, motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? All right, so the next item on the agenda is the sign for the McKinley Station subdivision. It's on Favorite Road and Eisenhower Street.
This one's going to take a little explanation, and I think you can see in our write-up that what they're proposing is to add some additional subdivision entrance signage at both entrances to McKinley Station. They have a north and south entrance. It's sort of a loop road that goes in off Everett, if you're familiar with that subdivision. They currently have some signage on the light posts that are on the picture here on the right-hand side. They're small, they're not quite 3 square feet, small sort of stone placards that are, on that. And what they do want to do is add a larger sign to a monument that sits on the opposite corner from the lampposts. So in reviewing it, this is what they proposed, both for the north and south entrance. That's what the sign would look like on the monuments. So the problem we ran into here is that we're concerned that the monument at the northern subdivision entrance may be too close to the property line. So we've asked them to have that surveyed and checked, and we think that it would, be advisable for the VRRB tonight to postpone any action on this until we get that information and know exactly how close that monument is. The sign regulations require a 10-foot setback from all property lines for a subdivision entrance sign.
We can't approve it subject to that verification?
Well, there were a couple of other things on the plan that were missing, and I spoke to the sign designer and also the HOA president, and they understood the problem, and so rather than make any changes to the application, they wanted to first look at what the sign setback is to start with, to see whether or not it's even worth them trying to move forward and pursue it.
So you want to wait till next month, or are you going to, if they happen to do it like in the next week, just wait till next month to be
Yeah.
better? Okay.
Yeah, they're not in a big rush on it. This
Okay.
is something they want to do, and we may have to look at what they can do if there is a setback violation. I spoke to Mark Shipley briefly about it, and he thinks that there may have been some adjustments made when because of the Everett Road project and the location of the walking trail in there, and at the north entrance, the monument may have gotten pushed back, and because even the monument probably should be 10 foot away even without the sign on it. So there's some question as to how it got located there and why, and whether or not that's something that can be looked at, whether they have to go and ask for a variance to the Board of Zoning Appeals, or replat or do something. And we weren't really able to advise them until we knew exactly what the problem was. So I thought we could at least look at what they're proposing tonight, so you could give them some feedback as to whether or not that's at least a reasonable look for the sign, and then they can work on any setback problems. So this is what they're proposing, look-wise. Under the regulations, they can have a total of 40 square feet per entrance, but they can divide it into two signs with neither sign exceeding 20 square. So they're looking at doing about a 20 square foot sign on the blank monument. And then, as I said, the existing signage that's on the decorative lamp pole is about 3 square feet, maybe a little less than that. So here's where the problem is, and it's in that narrow open space area is where the monument sits now. There next to lot 30. So it's really a question as to how close that monument is to the property line that lies somewhere between that house and the monument. I went out and looked at it. I'm pretty confident just from looking at it that it's well within the 10-foot setback.
Oh, yeah.
But until we know how much it's in that setback and whether or not it might even be in a utility or a drainage easement, we needed more information, and so, and then this is an example of the decorative light pole the way it looks now. The top picture on the left is a picture of one of the monuments that sits on the opposite corner. Same type of stonework, same sort of look. And then what they want to do is put something like that McKinley Station sign there in the black and the white with the gold trim in that blank space on the monument.
It stands out more. the black and the gold much.
Yeah,
to an
and it's
extent.
also much
good.
larger.
Yes.
I mean, literally, the ones on the lampposts are about this large. They're very small.
I like the sign itself, if we, you know.
Yeah. So if, you know, if you're comfortable with the look of the sign, I can at least pass that on to them so they at least have that much input. And then, you know, when we find out, you know, what the setback issue is, if there's any other issues with easements or anything like that, and then, you know, try to sit down with them and see what, if anything, can be done. I don't think they'd want to do one just on one of the entrance, because, you know, I think
not
that
be
would lack some,
balanced.
you know, some balance and sort of symmetry there, but, you know, that would be their decision as well. The one on the monument on the south entrance sits on a very large open space lot that also includes a detention basin, so they don't have an issue at the south entrance. It's just the north entrance.
Well, to me, it's a good-looking sign. It's going to be easy to read.
Much easier.
Is there already lighting there for the sign? Did you say that anywhere?
There is a small spotlight in front of each monument. You know, we'd have to evaluate that as to whether or not it was compliant and that sort of thing. But again, we didn't get a lot of detail. You know, this is the application they turned in, you know, so we didn't have any detail on lighting or anything like that. So, and rather than, you know, go to the effort of updating their application, we thought we should at least find out about the setback issues first.
Well, they would probably want a little bit of lighting, or else you won't be able to read that sign at night. But with it being so close to the houses right there, I'm sure the neighbors would appreciate a pleasant lighting,
Yeah.
you know, there, so. All right, so it sounds like what we need to do is have a vote and a motion and a vote for postponement. It sounds like the homeowner association, the sign company, everyone's in agreement with that.
Yeah.
So-
I spoke with the HOA president or at least whoever I was dealing with on this, who approached us as to whether or not they could do this. And so it's they're aware of the issue, and they're working on getting it documented to find out exactly what the problem is.
Okay. Well, with that and everyone being in agreement, do we have a motion on this one?
Motion to postpone until March VRB meeting,
March or until they work out the
or
issues?
until they work out the issues
Yeah.
of the,
And they gotta submit a revised plan as well, right?
yeah,
Well, they will.
thank you.
All right, we have a motion. Do we have a second on the motion?
I'll second it.
All right, motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? All right, so that brings us down to one we've taken a look at pretty recently, the Comfort Suites Interstate Pole Sign on North Campbell Station Road. Looks like they made some changes to what we approved just a short time ago.
Yeah. Basically, if you remember, the last iteration of this sign is pretty much the same dimensions. It's just that it was more vertical. You know, they've gone back to having the sign face, you know, being, you know, more traditionally horizontal on the top of the pole, where the earlier one, you know, extended down the pole a little bit more and was more vertical. But the overall height of the sign is the same. The overall square footage of the sign is the same as what you approved. And in both cases, they're less than what's there now. So we'd recommend approval of it, subject to the actual location and height being field verified by a surveyor once it's installed. It is an interstate pole sign. It does qualify for those, so or for that type of sign. And there are some location and height requirements on that. But being that it's below the height of the existing sign, they shouldn't have a problem meeting the height requirement relative to the road.
Yeah, it seems to me, like you said, it's very close to what we've already approved, so it looks very similar. Is there any other discussion on this one? Okay, do we have a motion? I'll make the motion to approve this one, subject to the location, height being field verified by the surveyor. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, so the last item on the agenda is the landscape plans, and we're looking at the Knox Valley Dental at 11840 Kingston Pike.
Okay, this is a landscaping plan for a dental office, the Knox Valley Dental office, and really a larger building that's being built. The dentist right now is going to occupy the westernmost wing of the building. Then there'll be space for lease in the eastern wing of the building. This is going in across from the Ingalls Shopping Center. There's a vacant lot in there. If you're familiar with that, that vacant lot that sits there. This is the site that's going on. It's sort of a forward located building. It's up close to Kingston Pike with all the parking behind and to the side. That heavily vegetated area or landscaped area there on what's the south side of the property is all their stormwater management area, the detention basins. That's why that's so heavily landscaped to meet the requirements for that. It's also a buffer area, so there were landscaping requirements, for the required buffer. We've reviewed it. We found a few items lacking on the plan, so we'd have to recommend approval subject to those being dealt with. We need to clearly locate and identify the top of the detention pond and provide the linear distance around it. It's a very busy plan. The contour lines are blended in there with the landscaping. It was a little hard to see the exact top there, and we want to make sure we get that accurately depicted and get the right distance on that. It's really two detention basins, so it's a little hard to see on the plan there, and that's something we wanted to clarify. They need to provide 3 more canopy trees within the center 100-foot section of the buffer strip area, as per the requirements under the town's landscaping regulations. They have to divide the required buffer area into 100-foot increments and provide the landscaping for each 100-foot increment. And on the center area, they were short 3 canopy trees. We need to have them revise the plan to ensure that at least 40% of the required landscaping on the stormwater detention basin are a flowering species of tree. Again, they can rearrange some of those from one section to the other, and they may have to do some substitutions on their species selection, but they do have to meet the 40% minimum for flowering species. We need them to verify their impervious area calculations. They have that on this plan, but it doesn't exactly match the impervious area calculation they had on their actual site plan. So that's probably just an editorial fix they need to make. And then because of the size of the building, we felt they needed to clarify who prepared the plan and that they had the right qualifications to do a plan under the state licensing for landscape architects and that sort of thing. So, subject to those.
Just subject to.
I mean, some of it is just really. Locating the top of the detention basin. It's there. It's just hard to see, and just making sure the linear distance is right. And the others are just adding a couple of trees or substituting out some species to meet the requirements. So it's not a big change. They clearly have a lot of landscaping on the site. They're doing a really good job with the landscaping. It's just to make some changes to the species selection and the location of some of the canopy trees in the buffer area to meet the the actual minimum requirement.
So you do not want us to table this one for the next meeting?
Well,
This is-
I think typically you have approved
Subject to
things
these
like this
5.
subject to. You did that With the brass lantern
Yes, we
one,
did.
originally there needed to be some changes on both the percentage of the flowering species on the detention basin and an additional tree or two. So it's, you know,
Okay.
it seems like a long list, but it's
Little.
yeah, it's not a
Little
hard
things.
list to, for them to fix.
Right, so on that, if I'm remembering right, behind the stormwater basin, as you start going up that street, that becomes residential.
Yes, sir.
Is it a residential home right behind this? remember?
I believe so. It's certainly a residentially zoned lot. Whether there's a house right there or a vacant lot, I can't recall right off the top of my head, but, you know, that's why there's a buffer in there.
And it looks like they've done a good job with the buffer, but with the residential there, and it is sometimes hard for me to read all of the ledger on all the landscaping, but just thinking about as many evergreen trees in there as possible, something that could help throughout the year. I know it's a dental office, so they're not going to be open too late at night probably,
Yeah.
but you know, as much as possible, and that's sort of the concern I had.
And they were also dealing with some through drainage on this site too, that there's drainage that comes in, that now comes in here like this and then comes through the site and exits,
Wow.
you know. So they had to deal with that and reroute some of that. So part of this drainage is, you know, accommodating existing drainage, and then some of it is detaining the water that they're adding to the site now that they're developing it. So it was a difficult site for them to work with.
Okay.
I have a question for you. So the, on the bottom of this where it says buffer trees and it says 4 canopy trees, 12 required, 12 provided, and there's 12 on the plan, do they not have it measured correctly? So is the bottom of this where they've laid out how many they need incorrect? For measurements?
I'd have to double check the exact count, but the problem is that they're short in the middle 100 foot of the buffer area. The way the regulations are required is, what they have to do is they have to basically, you know, divide the
them out.
buffer area into 100 foot segments, and there's a minimum requirement for each segment. And in this middle segment, they don't have enough canopy trees. So they might just be able to rearrange some of them
Shift
around.
that a little
Okay.
bit.
Okay. That makes sense. That's what I was wondering. I was like, because are they on here, but just where? Okay. Got it.
So he was saying 3 more added, but if they do it right, they won't have to.
They're there. They're just not in the right
Spots.
places. See, there's more space around
Because he
here.
had said 3.
So they
yeah.
put a bunch of them, like on the outer edges.
Good job.
That's what I was trying to figure out. I'm like,
So do you know how deep that lot is in feet? If you look at the little drawing, it looks like it's about half of the total lot space that's vacant. Is that correct?
I'm not sure what you're asking.
Well, we were talking about the houses behind it, and then I looked in this location map. It looks like that little square is about half of the depth of the total lot that's open. Is that a good assumption?
No, that's just showing the site without other lots around it.
Okay.
Yeah, that's not a full sort of parcel layout map. It's,
Okay.
yeah.
And there's no dimension on how deep that is, right?
Yeah, I'd have to zoom in to see whether or not there's a dimension on any of those lot lines.
Okay, I just was curious how close it was to
Above
this.
the 100 feet. So,
see all of these big ones.
'Cause it's a fairly big lot there.
Yeah, it is, and it met all the zoning requirements in terms of going through the site plan review process at the planning commission level. Again, it was a difficult site for them to work with. I mean, really the landscaping was probably the easiest thing for them to deal with on this site. They had to work with access and fire access. really had to make a couple revisions to their site plan to get, the size of building they wanted on the site and still accommodate parking and drainage controls and that sort of thing. So it went through several iterations at the site planning level.
Because I don't think it should. But aren't those three too? Okay, and then these are three. And then that one, and then that one, too.
So would you say, is this kind of like the minimal amount of
Yeah, and I wonder what
plants
this
that
count
need
is.
to be, to make it meet the code or meet the regulations? It looks real busy to me. Just
I mean, from their overall landscaping plan, that they have quite a bit of landscaping, being proposed on this site. Well, well in excess of what's,
Okay, so this
totally
is excess.
required. It's just that
Kind of
they
buffer
didn't
force
meet a couple of specific requirements for the buffer area and for the area around the detention basins. So it's just a matter of them either changing out a few species here and there
I
or
understand.
or moving some trees around.
So do you know what?
Yeah, they're well over standard. They have a lot of landscaping around the building, well in excess of what they're required there. They have a good bit of landscaping for the parking lot area, but
So what are the buffer trees going to be? Are they, I mean, what trees are they going to have, do you, I mean? so they're-
well, they'll
whichever
have to,
these-
they'll have to add three canopy type trees that, larger trees there in the middle, and they can relocate some or just add one in there. As to what they want to substitute out, for the flowering trees, for the 40% on the stormwater, that'll be up to them.
That's their choice, okay.
Yeah, that'll be their choice.
The holly, the tupelo, I don't know what a tupelo is, black tupelo. River birch, and then the hydrangea. Does the hydrangea get that large?
That's not a tree, that's shrub.
That's right. So the hollies do. And the birch. How large are the tupelos? A shade tree. Oh, the other size. Okay,
That's the
great.
size when they're putting them in.
It gets large too, I assume. Fair, I mean, the hollies definitely do, so 6 height.
Good.
You good?
Yes,
I don't have any.
You're good?
yes, sorry.
All right. All right, well, is there any further discussion? All right, if no further discussion, do we have a motion on Knox Valley Dental's landscaping plan?
I'll make a motion to approve, subject to the items that staff recommended, the 5 items that staff recommended. Clearly verified on the plan
That's
and
right.
depicted. Do you want me to
To
list them
save
out?
time.
Well, that's fine.
I think we know. All right, so we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, that's the end of our regular agenda items. I think we've got one minor update for us from last month's
Yeah.
agenda.
On the, oh, wow, hang on a minute. Okay. If you remember at the last meeting, you did look at the site plan, or I should say the sign plan for the brass lantern sign. They changed the location from the original landscaping plan that you had seen at the last one, and that was discussed at the last meeting. And so they were going to have to revise the landscaping plan to go along with that. They've done that. It was a very, very minor revision. And so wanted to let you see it just briefly to see whether or not you feel that it's minor enough that we can just, process it internally as a minor revision. Here it is. I've got a full-size sheet. If anyone wants to look at the full-size sheet.
So what did they change?
This was the one with the mailboxes.
Yeah,
in the front.
yes, the mailboxes and,
Okay. I was like,
which is going to be a common theme from here on out.
Now, of course, we don't have standards, right now for any required landscaping around the mailbox area. So really, when the board first reviewed their landscaping plan, it was for the sign area and then the detention basins. So their revised plan shows both the new sign area, which is down here in the corner. They've made some minor modifications to the landscaping plan to accommodate that sign. They changed some of the planting numbers and rearranged some of the plants, but it's still, well in excess of what's required in terms of landscaping that. It's generally the same species. It's, again, slightly different numbers that they originally proposed for that corner. Some rearrangement, obviously, to accommodate that sign. The sign originally was proposed to be over in this corner, which is now going to be part of the mailbox area. And then, in terms of the, in terms of the stormwater detention basins, there are 2 of them on the site. They haven't made any changes to those whatsoever. So it's same count of trees and shrubs, same species, same locations. So no changes to any of that landscaping, and very, very minor changes to that one corner there to accommodate their sign. So we felt like, we needed at least let you see what they've done, I'll let you review it and see whether or not you feel like it needs to come back to you for a formal approval. But we, felt that it was a pretty minor adjustment to their plan.
I agree, it's minor, and I hate to hold them up on their whole thing for that, based on what they've done, because they were really good to work with when they were here before, and they did a good job with the variety of landscaping, so I would think it'd be fine to proceed.
Yeah.
agree.
All right, is there anything else other than this additional item to review?
No, that was it.
All right, well, with that, we will call this meeting to an end or close it down. Until next time, thank you, everyone.
By fast.